Hi, welcome to Legal Studies, and today we're going to be learning about the role of the High Court in acting as a check on Parliament. So where are we in the study design? Well, here we are, looking at our different checks on Parliament, and we're almost at the end, looking at all the different ways in which we try and prevent Parliament from getting a bit out of hand, prevent Parliament from abusing its power. So if we're thinking about the High Court is something that was established by the Constitution. We can see here Section 76 created the High Court and gave it the power to interpret any disputes arising under the Constitution or involving its interpretation. So the Constitution created the High Court and let it interpret disputes about what the Constitution means. And so the role of the High Court, in terms of acting as a check on Parliament, it does this in a couple of ways. First of all, the High Court has a role as acting as a guardian of the Australian Constitution. We saw that just before in that section I highlighted. The High Court has the ability to interpret what the Constitution means, and by doing that, by interpreting what the Constitution means, if Parliament has passed a law that violates the Constitution, the High Court can sort of invalidate that law. Same thing more broadly, it can act as a check on any abuse of power. If Parliament has passed a law outside of its power, so in other words, if Parliament has tried to make a law that the Constitution hasn't enabled them to make, the High Court can also invalidate a law like that. And finally, one of the High Court's roles is to give meaning to the words of the Constitution. So it interprets the words and sometimes has to decide exactly what they mean. And by doing that, they might expand the meaning of a word or shrink it down. And this can impact on what sorts of things Parliament can put in their laws as well. So if we're thinking about strengths and weaknesses of the court in terms of its ability to act as a check on Parliament, how good is it at restricting Parliament when Parliament is perhaps abusing its power? Well, let's have a look here. First of all, on the one hand, we've got judges are independent from Parliament. And so a strength of their ability to act as a check is that they can make decisions that are based on correct legal principle and not have to worry about political pressure. And so if Parliament does something wrong, the courts can feel free to act as a check and stop them. On the other hand, judges are actually appointed by the executive. Judges are picked by the government when there's a new position open. And so technically, there might be some fear that, the government can choose judges that will, be biased in favour of them. That's a bit of a problem in America, but in practice in Australia, it hasn't tended to be too much of an issue. It tends to be fairly politically neutral. Another strength is that the High Court has the ability to invalidate any law that violates the Constitution. So if Parliament makes a law that violates one of your rights under the Constitution or something like that, the High Court can just strike it down, right, invalidate it. But on the other hand, judges can only make a decision if the case actually gets to court. Right? And people are often reluctant to go to court because it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, they need to have standing, which means they have to have been affected by the law. So yes, the court can act as a very strong check if Parliament violates the Constitution, but only if someone actually brings the case to court. So strength balanced by the weakness there. Where Parliament has made a law that's outside of their power, the High Court as well is able to invalidate that law. So again, acting as a really strong check on Parliament. But the flip side to that is the judge can only make a ruling for that particular case. So they have to make a decision for the dispute that is in front of them, which means that they're not actually able to make more broad general principles. And so they might be able to act as a check on Parliament in that specific case right then at that moment, but they can't set a broader rule preventing other things Parliament might do. So when Parliament does a similar thing in the future, they'd have to get brought back before the court to check again. So again, strengths and weaknesses. And that's it for the role of the High Court acting as a check on Parliament. See you next time.